Welcome to CooLife Podcast, brought to you by therealthingdating.com. www.therealthingdating.com.
Polydor Records for out scouting. This girl grabbed my bangs and ran my head right into the speaker.
Oh,
And everyone cheered like this. Yeah.
When we shot the scene in Good Will Hunting, I didn't know who most of these people were at the time. I mean, they weren't stars. It was Gus Van Sant that directed it. Gus Van Sant was on the floor with Matt Damon's character. I didn't even know who Matt Damon was at that time.
I'm Eva John. I'm a former candidate for local government. I was a children's television entertainer, and I love this world, and I believe we should take care of each other and have a lot of fun along the way. Welcome to CooLife. Here we go. And welcome to CooLife Podcast. I'm Eva John, and welcome to our part 2 conversation with Leon GRAAFLAND of CHEESEMAKING Classes Toronto. Welcome, Leon.
Thank you. Hi, nice to be here.
And I just want to once again put your website up. Can I ask you to tell us your website?
It's www.cheesemakingclassestoronto.com.
Thank you so much. So we'll have that for everyone to see, also on the video portion of this podcast. Now, to continue this fascinating conversation about cheese making and the fact that you are the owner and operator of a cheese making business where people get to experience that hands-on understanding, knowledge, the purveying of the different ins and outs of turning milk to cheese. And once your students have gone through your courses, can they just independently start making cheese at home? Is there any equipment, for example, that they need to have to be prepared to make cheese independently?
A little bit. You need some malt to drain the curds. So technically that's a big bowl with holes on every side that the water seeps out and the cheese, the fresh cheese, stays in there. A pot, some clean utensils, and a little bit of equipment like a pH meter is handy, or I use a phonometer.
Okay.
And that's about it. I bring all the information, and I give you the step-by-step procedures of how to start and how to do it, and that must be enough to get you started, for sure.
Now, are there precautions that we would need to make when we're making cheese at home, like ventilation or making certain that we do certain types of disinfecting, just like sometimes if somebody is pickling and so on, how they have to sterilize jars. So for making cheese, are there precautions in the setup?
Yes, it's be as clean and sterile as possible. I mean, I realized that back in the days, people did it in the back of stables and in their houses, and nobody knew anything about bacteria and infections and everything that could go wrong. But so now we know about it, and I say just sterilize everything. Keep your equipment clean, your utensils clean, your pots clean, things like that. And that is like 80% of a very good start, and to avoid any future complications, that's for sure.
Now, Leon, I've heard of cheeses that are flavored with wine and coffee and various other things. Is that a very complex process, or is that something a new cheesemaker can tackle?
Everybody can do it. I'm a purist myself. I don't like it to put any flavors in my cheeses. Although I play with beer, I play with red wine, I play with truffles, maple syrup,
Right.
and goat cheese. That's always a good one. Um, yeah, it is very easy. Um, it once again, it depends on the recipe. It depends on what you're doing. So you can fresh cheese is dump it in wine and let the red wine just soak into the cheese. Or when you use truffles, you put them in before instead of afterwards. And it depends what you like to achieve and what you are doing.
Okay.
But now everybody can do it. Yeah.
Okay. Something to look forward to is probably alters the budget somewhat to put
Mhm.
truffles in your cheese. Unless you're growing your own in your yard. So if a student enjoys certain cheeses like brie or Havarti or Jarlsberg, is that a complicated cheese to make if we start talking about these kinds of cheese that are not just a simple slab of cheese and away you go? Is that something you can actually learn to make in the early part of your cheese making?
Yes. I mentioned earlier, the basics of every cheese is more or less the same. You start with your starter cultures that sours the milk to protect your milk, and that breaks uh, the sugars into lactate for the lactose intolerant people.
Right.
And after that, the starter cultures also give you a lot of flavors. So depending on what kind of starter cultures you are using, that gives you the outcome of your cheese. So for a brie or a camembert, we use different cultures than for a Swiss or for a cheddar or for anything Italian. It just all depends on what cultures you use at the beginning, what gives you the end result that you're looking for.
See
But
that
in my
that
but in my classes, if you give me enough time and I get you the right cultures, we can make every cheese. We can make every cheese possible.
But it's just that, for example, that lacy texture that you see in a Havarti cheese is just the reaction of the cultures that's making that. That's not some special technique that the
No,
student has to do.
no, that's correct. And when there are some cheeses, you cook them at a different temperature. Um, there are some small little variations with your cheeses when you make them that gives you a different outcome. But that is all. I will explain that to you in every workshop, and that's very easy. That's very
Yes,
easy to adjust.
that's
But it is mainly it's the culture in the beginning, the bacteria in the beginning that um, gives you the cheese you want at the end.
now you were mentioning before also about the aging of cheese. Now, some of these more gourmet type cheeses, like brie, is there a certain aging, or is that a more fresh cheese, or something like a Gouda in order for it to be a good cheese? Are these like the longer they're aged, the better?
Um, for a Gouda, yes, you can eat a Gouda after 4 weeks. I prefer it after like 18 months or 2 years. Cheddar, same thing. After like 6 months to a year, it's getting good. For a brie, because it's a small cheese, it's also ripening not faster, but it's getting its maturity faster. So after 4 to 6 weeks, I say after 6 weeks it is at a stop, and when you leave it too long, then it's getting gooey, and the flavor start to a little sour, and it's 4 to 6 weeks. That's it. Other cheeses like what I said, your Gouda, your cheddars, things like that. Good Spanish cheeses, 4 to 6 months, up to a year, 2 years, 3 years. The harder the cheese, the longer you can get it on the shelf.
Okay. So then if I've encountered a sort of a bitterness to a brie cheese, then it's likely that I've had a brie that's been overaged, then is that
Um, when it is still coarse in the middle, it is too young. When it is really, really gooey and you put it on a plate and it just oozes out, then it is too old.
mhm. We've had our cheese lesson from Leon of Cheese Making Classes Toronto. And we're going to take a little break to talk about our sponsors and supporters. We'll be right back on CooLife Podcast.
Those lonely days of lockdowns and isolation are gone for good. Go to www.therealthingdating.com. That's www.therealthingdating.com. It's time to share. Share your time, share your life, share your love. www.therealthingdating.com. Join for free. Upgrade at any time, starting at just $5.99 a month. www.therealthingdating.com. Because it's time. You're listening to the CooLife Podcast. We'll be back in 3, 2, 1.
And we are back at CooLife Podcast. I'm Eva John, continuing our conversation with Leon of Cheese Making Classes Toronto. Leon, as you mentioned earlier, you were born in Gouda, the Netherlands. And can you tell me, what is your earliest memory of cheese making or observing cheese making?
I had an uncle who had a driving cheese store. So he came from door to door with his cheese shop on wheels. And I will never forget his bell when he arrived into the street. It was always loud and everybody knew he was there. And that was my first experience with cheese. It was my uncle in his mobile cheese store.
A really, really sweet way to remember that coming from someone in your family and in the most simple, humble way of purveying cheese. And now and fast forward to your future, you're a highly and well educated and skilled cheesemaker. You're developed yourself and your skills personally in your knowledge in actually having studied cheese making. And for everything that you've experienced, now you know there's more to it than just a gut feeling. There's a true science to it. You were mentioning earlier that rennet is used. For those who do not understand exactly what rennet is and how it's harvested, can you tell me about rennet and that process of making cheese?
It is coming from, it's an enzyme, and you buy it in a bottle. It's just a liquid, but it is originally from a kid's stomach. So a young cow stomach, and the only way to get there is through the unfortunate ending of the cow. That's just the way it is. So as a cheesemaker, there are many vegetarian options. Vegetarian rennets, or they take the DNA from the original rennet and they mass produce it in a lab. But the original rennet, you need it for the curdling of the milk to separate the water, the whey, from the cheese itself. And it's done with this animal rennet, with this enzyme for close to 10,000 years. And it is a traditional way of making cheese. And for many, they still think it's the best way to do it. Like I said, I know there are alternatives for vegetarians, for people who don't feel the need to use this animal rennet, but it is the traditional way, and that's how most cheesemakers still do it today. And sometimes I just follow their ideas, because why change something that works, right?
For the end result. However, I
Yep.
mean, you've also mentioned there's science and technologies involved now that they're able to basically, when you say mass produce, I guess basically they're cloning that rennet, I guess after a fashion, if they can take the original rennet sample and produce more. So I guess it's almost a cloning technique of it, is it?
That's correct. Yeah. It's like a bacteria based microbial rennet. So it's not technically from the animals. You can use fig. You can use vinegar to make the cheese
Right.
curdle if you really want to go old style and traditional. I I used fig once. It is difficult. It's different because it is kind of like you never know where it starts and where it happens or where it ends. But it's fun to experiment, and uh, yeah, I use different kind of rennets to make the cheese just to see what happens.
And you can get that curdling effect you mentioned from vinegar, but you can do that with lemon juice as well.
Lemon juice as well. Yeah.
And so if someone is uncomfortable using rennet, then they've got lots of other options and probably in their cupboard right now. Go
Yep.
get that
That's
lemon,
correct.
go get that lime, go get that vinegar. Now, for being from Gouda, a place where the namesake of one of the more well-known cheeses in the world, and having mentioned some other types of cheese, like, do you find with your exposure to vast types of cheese, different varieties of cheese, are you satisfied with just a slice of cheddar?
It depends where the cheddar comes from. A small little fun fact: in Gouda, there's not a single cheese dairy. There's not a single cheese factory. There's a cheese market. They don't make cheese there. It's a beautiful market, old historic market of 400 or 500 years old. It's absolutely gorgeous. But no, they don't make cheese. Am I satisfied to answer your question? Am I satisfied with just a simple slice of cheddar? Yes, I am. Um, I think that here in Canada, uh, Ontario especially, and traditionally in Quebec, they make very good cheeses. It's very small batches, artisan cheeses, and more people are getting into it. And there's a new trend of developing new flavors, new cheeses, and yeah, it is moving in the right direction. That's for sure.
Right. I know one of my father's favorite cheeses was Oka cheese from Quebec,
Hmm.
and to me that just seemed a normal thing to have Oka cheese in the fridge. It was daddy's cheese. Once in a while I'd have it, but it's like, yeah, but it's not the same as when you get to take it out of that plastic wrapper and use that square piece of processed cheese to perfectly fit on a piece of bread when you're an 8-year-old kid. And I'm sure that makes you cringe.
A little bit, yeah. Every time when I see that dark yellow, almost orange slice of perfect square coming
Yeah.
coming out of the plastic flesh, no, I
Well,
can't
they've
do it.
got one like Swiss. They make one now in the same plastic square process, and it's the lighter yellow, and they call it
Mhm.
Swiss, processed Swiss. So, and I won't mention Cheese Whiz. Okay.
No, please don't.
And with that, we'll take a break and we'll talk about our sponsors. We'll be right back on
Thank
CooLife Podcast.
Those lonely days of lockdowns and isolation are gone for good. Go to www.therealthingdating.com. That's www.therealthingdating.com. It's time to share. Share your time, share your life, share your love. www.therealthingdating.com. Join for free. Upgrade at any time, starting at just $5.99 a month. www.therealthingdating.com. Because it's time. This is CooLife Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to CooLife on your streaming service and on YouTube as Hellenique Today. That's HELENIQUE Today. Because that helps us to bring more cool stuff to your ears. You're listening to the CooLife Podcast. We'll be right back.
And we are back on CooLife Podcast. I'm Eva John with Liam. of Cheese Making Classes Toronto.
Manufactured Swiss. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, um, it is kind of funny because a couple of 100 years ago, when all the British came to the United States, making cheddar in the United States,
Right.
and then they start importing it back to England because there were no cheesemakers left. Yeah, there was a different thing going on with landlords who owned like 80% of the county, and they handed out leases to cheesemakers, things like that.
Mm,
So at the moment that nobody was working for themselves, they thought, oh, let's try it on the other side of the world and see what happens there.
right.
But then everybody was making cheese here, and they send it back to to England.
But that's England's food industry has been affected that way in a few different levels because I know King Charles, while he was still Prince Charles, worked fervently on trying to reignite the farming industry in England.
Mhm.
I don't know how successful he was at that, because of, just any plate of food that people eat in England, where they realized that like 80% of it was imported and that they weren't really growing any of their own food anymore. And it's too bad because they do have green and lovely land. It's just not used the way it used to be.
No, that's correct.
A lesson to be learned, I hope. And Leon, I just want to kind of ask if you can give us a deeper insight. You had mentioned your interest and your work involving space travel, and I'm wondering, can you tell me more about your interest in rockets and where that came from?
Well, it's hard to explain. A friend of mine had a very good position with KLM, the airline. He had a great salary, had great benefits, and he is kind of known for his practical jokes. So one day I saw him doing an interview on Australian television, uh, just talking about private space travel. And my first reaction was, oh, there we go again. So we got him on the phone within half an hour. It was pre-recorded, so he was not in Australia. I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yeah, I quit my job. I'm the COO of Xcore Aerospace, and I was working for a big Canadian travel agency. So I said, if you are so sure that this is gonna work, give me the Canadian rights." And he did. So for a couple of years, I was traveling through Canada, meeting the most fascinating people, setting up the most beautiful meetings, trying to sell them tickets uh, out of this world. And in all honesty, I said it before, I was the dumbest guy in the room with the best story, and it was so much fun. And that is as far as my interest into for space goes. I don't see myself ever leaving this planet. Um, Although, if I know, not for sure, uh, can't afford it. Probably have better ways to spend it on than on a ticket to space.
That's
Although I
only a quarter
really
of a million, right?
a little bit, yeah,
250,000
something like that.
US.
Yeah, somewhere between 150 and $250,000
Right,
American back.
right. Pack a sandwich and
Yeah, no, I mean the flight is an hour. It is you go up, you go down,
right.
and that's it. But the whole process of being so innovative and just being on the forefront of new technology, it was so fascinating, and I really enjoyed my time. And it never crystallized, but now I'm here. I'm talking to you, and we're talking cheese, and it is just as much fun as as my previous career. Let's say it that way.
Sure. Well, you've certainly stepped into something fascinating, and your knowledge of cheese making is really inspiring. Now, we had earlier had touched a little bit on vegan cheese, and just to bring that back again, I'm wondering, in some other types of vegan products and vegetarian products, you'll see where they will imitate something that a carnivore will eat, where you can get, vegan hot dogs or vegetarian hot dogs and, something that imitates a ground beef. For vegan cheese, Are there vegan cheeses that replicate flavors like Gouda or like Brie, like Havarti, or is it their its own unique type?
Yeah, no, I can make you a vegan brie. So with the white fluffy outside and creamy inside. A vegan cheddar is always popular. Vegan Gouda, never tried it. I've seen a recipe. And there are a lot of cream cheeses and young, fresh cheeses that you can make from coconut oil and cashew nuts or other kinds of nuts and things like that. So yeah, because they totally imitate existing cheeses
Right.
and just on a plant-based version.
That's amazing that you can enjoy the depth of flavors that you'd find with other types of well-known gourmet cheeses. That's wonderful. Now, I'll tell you, my little venture into the so-called gourmet world is, I became fascinated some just a few years ago with making French onion soup, and I discovered for my hometown, looking around for Gruyere to go on top of my soup, couldn't find any. And I mean, I searched. There's probably some smaller shops if I asked there, but I was reluctant to because of inventory turnover. Personally, I just didn't want to find somebody had a dusty old package of Gruyere to present to me. So I found on the internet a substitute described as a combination of mozzarella with Gouda, and I used a smoked Gouda. So on my French onion soup, in my whole life of making my own French onion soup
Mhm.
so far, I've never had it with Gruyere. Now, is there something that's very rare or special about the making of Gruyere that there was like a Gruyere desert around here for a while?
No. Um, it is a protected cheese, so there are only a couple of manufacturers who can make it, and they have to use specific techniques and milk from specific cows, and they can only pasture on specific regions in Switzerland. But there is no shortage. It is an expensive cheese, so that's why a lot of supermarkets don't carry it. It's also got this kind of specific flavor, a little. Uh, that's hard to explain. In a good quality cheese store, you can always find it. You can find a cheaper version sometimes in a good supermarket, but that is not the real Gruyere. Um, yeah, you have to look for it, and you have to go to specific cheese stores that sell it. But once you taste it, you don't go back to smoked Gouda and mozzarella. That's for sure.
I had to do what I had to do. I wasn't
Yeah,
looking
no,
for
I don't doubt
it,
it.
but I feel a little heartbroken about it because I mean I've had in other cities I've been served French onion soup, but to
Mhm.
make my own French onion soup, it was actually a semi-religious experience. I knew I was experiencing something very special, and I had so much love and respect for those in the many centuries before who understood the chemistry and the scientific combination of these ingredients, of what it's like to stand over your pot for 30 minutes at least to let the sweetness evolve
Yep.
out of your onions. And the I knew something was happening when the white wine went in along with the thyme, and at that point in our family, we had like three cats. They all came down to the kitchen, not a scrap of meat involved, but they all came in like they had those faces sniffing that they wanted to eat what they could smell. And it was onions and wine and thyme, and they loved it. So I knew there was something beautiful if they could get my cats to want to
Mhm.
eat onions. That I was experiencing something really beautiful that I didn't understand as a patron in a restaurant, eating my soup as opposed to making it step by step and seeing the beauty of it. And now I know I was robbed of something not having the Gruyere on top.
It's using alternatives for food is doing a little experiments with ingredients, just making some small changes. I like it. It's sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not, but at least you gave it your own thing, and that's a beautiful thing.
I was
So
determined to serve it that
at the
first
moment that
time.
your cats are showing up for something is right here, then you did something good.
Exactly. It was a miraculous moment when I realized that they wanted what I was cooking, and there was not one scrap of meat in there. And so it was interesting to observe. And I just would like to know, for your experience with cheese, and do you have a favorite cheese to make or a favorite technique or methodology of cheese that you enjoy above others?
Favorite cheese to make? I would go back to my mozzarella or burrata because it is right there. 45 minutes. You make it from milk to your cheese. And every time when I do this in a workshop, then it's getting very quiet around me. Everybody goes, "Oh, this is fascinating what you're doing here." And because it is 5 minutes old, it tastes the best. You cannot beat a 5 minute old mozzarella. So you cut it open, little basil, little basilicum on a plate, tomato, delicious. Favorite cheese to eat? I had the pleasure of eating a hard bison. It's from Vermont. You can only eat it during Christmas. It's like a
Mm.
brie that they wrap in the bark of a pine. So all the flavors and the flavors of a pine bark that travels into like a brie or a camembert.
Oh,
And it's very it's very delicious. But you can only get it in the States, so we have to travel.
oh, that's fascinating. Well, now I have a new quest and
Hmm.
something to experience and to look forward to. Leon, I want to thank you so much for your time, your energy, and being here and showing us and introducing us to the wonderful opportunities that come from cheese making. And so I hope that we'll have an opportunity to experience this even closer. So thank you so much for joining us here
Thanks.
at CooLife.
Thank you. Thank you. The pleasure was mine. And if you ever want to attend a cheese workshop, please let me know and we set it up for you.
Certainly. And I look forward to more. And thank you again. And for now, goodbye. And thank you all for joining us at Cool Life Podcast. I'm Eva John. Bye now.
Thank you.
And that was our show. Thank you for listening to the very end. Please remember to subscribe through your streaming service to get more access to our guest interviews. Also, please subscribe on YouTube to help support our podcast. Until next time, I'm Eva John for CooLife Podcast. Thank you for turning me on.